Hi, my name is Chris Galinato, and my documentary explores diversity at Rio Americano High School from the perspective of a student of color. I hope this helps support the ongoing conversation about how to welcome students of color here at Rio. Thank you for watching, and here's the documentary. When you search up the word diversity, the definition you will most likely come across will be in relation to variety, inclusion, and a range of different things. The word diversity has so many meanings that it's almost like layers, multiple layers to dive into that it will take a while to dive into all of it. The layer I want to unfold is the layer pertaining to the minority, specifically in the setting of going to a predominantly all-white high school. The schools in the San Juan district are very segregated and separated, where some have more of one than the other. Being specific with Rio, according to the Public School Review, it says that there is a 32% of minority enrollment, which significantly is lower than the state's average of 77%. This means there's a lower percentage of minorities in the school, and even from just an outside perspective, it shows. What I want to show and solely highlight are the perspectives from the lenses of diversity in a way that is not traditionally seen. From my experience, from someone that went to Rio, and from someone that is outside of the school, to get perspective on all fronts, so there's an understanding on why diversity is important, even in a place like a school. Now, as a senior in high school that has to live the rest of his high school days in quarantine through a computer screen, thinking back to it, my high school experience wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. Before going to high school, the middle school I had attended was so incredibly diverse. I found it easier to get used to the feel of the place and the vibe that people had brought to the table. I felt a sort of belonging in that I easily fit in with everybody. With that said, when transitioning into Rio Americano High School, I felt some sort of culture shock. It was a strange transition that I never really got used to. It felt harder to make friends with other people because even on my first day as a freshman, with the first day jitters, I had to gripe with the fact that I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me nor felt like I can be comfortable with. I didn't feel a sense of relief and didn't feel like I could speak. It was like putting on a mask. Though I had some friends that also came over from my time in middle school, I couldn't shake that isolated feeling I had in me and almost felt like I didn't belong in the school. I felt out of place and I didn't feel as welcome to everything around me. This affected a lot of my education as it felt the system was almost very against me. I felt like I was the only dark-skinned person in the room while the room was all just the same. It felt like I had to put my mask on just to act a certain way so I can feel a sort of belonging when I never felt like I was portraying truly myself. It ended up with me lying to myself and thinking that was who I was, when in brutal reality, I was really just lying to myself. I never felt the slightest representation. It was all just a blank slate. It wasn't until I had met other friends that had understood me and my background in my junior year that I had started to feel somewhat a sort of belonging, until that was cut short due to the pandemic, which forced myself and millions of students all over the world to continue their lives from their home. Other than that, I had never felt like I truly belonged in the high school I was in. What makes it worse is when the racist post at the beginning of my junior year came out. When it first came out, I first took it as a joke, but realized more later on how almost unsafe I felt as the year continued onwards. I felt almost attacked even when it wasn't at all directed towards me. It was an attack on minorities, and with the school being one predominant color, it's already hurtful to go somewhere that didn't feel like a home. I don't feel as tortured by it now, but back then when I was still going to school in person, I always felt unsafe. I felt ashamed of having dark skin. The racist post wasn't directed towards me, but I still felt a bit uneasy for that it can apply to one person of color. This was already an ongoing issue to me, and this only amplified it. It made me feel depressed that I couldn't get along with people as easily. I can try and be something I'm not, but it just felt like I was failing myself. Going to a place that didn't feel like a home was just hours of torture that were endless reminders of the lack of representation I had. Only trinkets and sprinkles of it came around, but it didn't last long enough to say I felt represented. Realizing I have half a year left of high school and will soon move on to college following graduation, I wanted to ask my sister, a Rio alumni, of her own experience on going from a predominantly white school to a majority populated college and how it personally affected her or impacted her.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Galinato. I'm a current sophomore over at Sacramento City Community College. So for me, I went to Rio Americano between 2014 and 2018. When I graduated, actually, a good majority of my class was Caucasian. And even within the classroom, that was reflected. I was a part of multiple things during my time at Rio. I was in student government. I was also part of the Civitas program and part of a multitude of clubs. Really, what I saw from my perspective was just a whole crowd of Caucasian people, and that's what it hit me over when I graduated back in 2018. Definitely felt that there was a favoritism and bias in the classroom because I, had a few things against me. I was a woman of color who was an ally to the LGBTQIA community. And time has definitely changed since then, but it definitely made me feel as if I was inferior to all of these Caucasian people. It felt like I was not properly supported. I feel as strongly as if the education system failed me, especially when I needed them the most. It's definitely hurt my perspective, and it's definitely changed my views in the last few years, especially given with what's happened in the last 4 years alone. I hope one day that there's more representation, and I hope things get better. The biggest thing that I've taken away from it is accepting my identity. But in order to make the difficult discussion that's so hard to have easier, I think it starts with the people who were able to have you be where you are today, and that was starting with my parents. And then from my parents, I went and talked to my extended family. After that, it came down to what I was doing outside of me being in school or outside of hanging out with my friends, and that's being involved with that one organization has allowed me to partake in so many opportunities within the Filipinx community that I would have never been able to before, and open doors in being a part of other communities. Because to me now, it's important to why we have ethnic studies. Being a part of the Filipinx community and saying that I'm Filipinx American is just the coolest thing. It's encouraged me to go out there and make change in the world. But for others who are in almost a similar situation, just a different ethnicity or race, there's a lot of healing that needs to be done, and I hope that in that healing process I can be a part of it by understanding and learning through my previous experience by being a part of these groups that have allowed me to do exactly that. And I'm just so proud that I get to be a part of truly having DEI work, that being diversity, equity, and inclusion, be seen on all fronts all around.
I took the liberty of asking my friend about how they felt about Rio. He had recently transferred from Rio to El Camino, so I wanted to see what made him switch and the differences he sees between the two schools and his perspective.
It's less diverse, come on. When I went to Rio at the same point, I thought like, oh, everyone's great, especially my mom. For her, she kind of saw like, oh, everyone's really nice and a lot more open. But later on the line, when I was a sophomore, I soon realized a lot of people were a lot more conservative and a lot more reluctant to talk to other people, especially in Arden. That was when I think that sort of cliquish vote activated or something, because it was so hard to talk to other people. And I talked with so many other people, but these kids were kind of a lot more distant, focused on like really maintaining a clique and a group within their boundaries. And for my junior year at El Camino, I gotta say I made more friends quickly compared to Rio, even in like Zoom calls, which is surprising. But when I went to Rio for the first time, I really had to initiate myself in a group where it doesn't seem like they don't want me around. A sense of, statistical bias between a lot of those kids. I don't blame the adults because I think they notice, but I don't think they know what to do. In the sense of racial diversity, I went to Barrett, and gotta say, there were a lot more African Americans, Latinos, and Asians compared to Rio. And that's just because where it is in suburbia. Like, I wanted to transfer a long time ago. I wanted to transfer since like winter of like 2019, actually. My transfer was like abrupt. I was just attending Zoom classes, and then after that I switched, and I'm like, okay, this is better, but like, what was the holdup? I soon realizes that I think a lot of people want to transfer out of like their school systems, and it's like a whole entire hectic thing. I really wish it was a lot easier to just transfer like mid-semester. Being at Rio didn't necessarily make me feel good. When I thought about graduating, do I really want to graduate where I feel like I survived or I had fun? When it comes down to it, it's just You just need to like walk away and go to a school that actually feels a lot more safer and more productive and able to really communicate with one another. But sadly, you live and you learn. Moral of the story, don't go to a school if you want to, don't go to a predominantly white school if you are a colored person. Not saying you should, but in my experience, I will never do that ever again.
Now, important as it was to get some insight from inside the school, I wanted more insight from my friend, Belle, about her views on the school she goes to in addition to her community and how it differentiates from other high school areas.
Hi, I'm Bella Glacia and I go to College Park High School in Pleasant Hill, which is in the East Bay area.
Why do you think diversity within school is important?
I think diversity is important because it provides a welcoming and safe place for all different kinds of people, and it promotes inclusiveness. I mean, diversity allows people to bring in their own unique experiences and ideas.
How can this affect a person's experience in the future?
I feel like understanding and learning different perspectives of a variety of people as you grow up can allow you to be more susceptible to change and growth.
What is your experience like in College Park High School?
My experience in high school, or currently in high school, is really good. My school has pretty good diversity, and although it's like still majority white people, it overall includes all different kinds of people of all cultures.
Do you feel accurately represented in your community, in media, etc.?
And I feel as though my community, specifically my school, makes it a point to represent all cultures. We have a lot of clubs like Filipino Club, Vietnamese Club, MASA, BSU, which is Black Student Union, and we also have a cultural rally every year where people can perform dances that represent their culture, and it's always a really fun time, and we have this whole Spirit Week dedicated to it.
If you were in a predominantly all-white school, what would your first thoughts or reactions be?
I feel like if I were placed in a predominantly all-white school, I think I'd automatically feel a little out of place and maybe even like a little looked at. It's not an unfamiliar feeling to me to be a minority in a public setting, but I feel like in high school that would definitely make me feel more out of place than usual.
If you could, what changes would you make in schools that are predominantly one color? And how do you think they can help represent other cultures?
I think one of the first steps to make places that don't have a lot of diversity is making it a really welcoming place for minorities and people of color. I mean, I think representing them in things like clubs or dedicating spirit days for pride and one's culture can make the school become more attractive to POC. I mean, obviously, depending on the area, it's not that easy to bring more diversity if the area in general is predominantly white.
As I've learned, there are a lot of layers to the word and idea of diversity, and though only a bit was covered, it's still something that should be brought up to any school district on any level within the schooling system. In order to truly change and better the entire education system, we need diversity in the classroom environment to improve it. I went ahead to ask all who I had interviewed one question. What is your definition of diversity?
I mean, diversity is like the presence of like culture and variety. A diverse community is one that includes people of all different ethnic backgrounds that can bring in their own experiences. And diversity doesn't always have to be race. It can be different sexualities and gender, just people who come from different places, all in one community to be able to provide and bring in their own experiences and unique ideas.
At the end of the day, I think my idea of diversity is just allowing everyone to freely express who they want to be, or not feel like the idea of being shamed of it.
My definition of diversity is having accurate representation on all fronts. That's not just your ethnicity or race, but also our sexual orientations, our body sizes. We are not truly represented until I see all of us represented on that forefront.
It's just respect. I really hope that they learn respect later through the line, or someone comes in knocking, like a sad, very angry Karen comes in and just says, no, this is enough. You will support everything.
So I hope one day we all truly will have diverse representation all around. Not just, oh, there's one person of color in the room, we're diverse kind of thing. Or, oh, we have like a majority of like diverse people sitting on this panel. No, that's not what this is.
You will support and soon allow people to say whatever they want and be whatever they like to do. and that shouldn't be knocked over or like joked around.
It's about accurately having everyone and everything that people are seen in everyone on everything.
I'm just having hope. I'm having hope for at least my generation to pull through on some chaotic goodness from Gen Z.
It's not diverse until those things are achieved.
Many people see different definitions of diversity, but all of them have one thing in common: inclusive representation amongst all.
If you have any questions, comments, or story ideas, make sure to email RaidersTVNews@gmail.com or DM Raiders TV News on Instagram. Thanks for watching, Raiders!